Hi everyone, thank you for watching A Year Full of Drama at the New York Baltic Film Festival. I'm here with director Marta Pulk, and we will dive behind the scenes to kind of give you a little more in-depth understanding of the film. So hi Marta, welcome, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So let's start from the very beginning. How did you settle on this idea? And I believe you developed it together with a theater group. So can you talk about how you guys know each other?
There's a theater group called Nybff in Estonia. And first of all, just to give you guys a little bit of a background, Estonia is a country that's very weird about theater. I think it's a lot of Soviet heritage, but we have 1.3 million people. And per that population, we have 1 million theater visits every year. So there's an outrageous amount of theater being made and watched. And there's this theater company called Kinoteater who does a lot of socially critical theater, a lot of experimental theater, and they conjured up this idea to take someone who has never ever been to the theater before and make them watch and review every single play. And so that idea actually came from them because as they were thinking like, okay, we do a project like this, but how can we bring it to the world? Clearly a film was the only way they could do that. So they ended up coming to me, inviting me on the project, and that's how it got started. But as you see, I think I kind of hijacked the story because I'm not really one to make art about art to other artists. To me, the story of Aasta and her development became so much more important than just giving the overview of Estonian theater. So the idea changed quite a lot while we were doing it.
As you were already creating. Yeah. And do you have a theater background yourself?
I don't really. I used to go to theater classes as a kid or in high school, but my sister is an actress, so I'm a little connected, but I'm not a huge theater buff.
Right. And so did you have any, you or the Kinoteater group, did you have any preconceived notions, like what you thought would happen? Or did you kind of just go in? Or hoping that would happen?
Honestly, since it truly was an experiment, then we would have accepted absolutely any outcome. We were prepared that whoever we picked, that they might just in 6 months say, but oh, fuck this shit, I'm not doing it anymore, and quit. And even that would have been a very acceptable outcome because that's what you want to see. You want to see what actually happens. Like that was the whole notion of the idea that instead of saying, yes, theater is valuable, all theater is art, all culture is extremely important and very necessary to someone, that you take that like this litmus paper or this this real person who it's intended for, and you let them decide. So any outcome would have been intriguing for us. Because you can imagine as a filmmaker, if she would have run away from me in 6 months, then it would still be a story.
Right, yeah. And do you think that her being filmed affected her decisions? Because she did come close to, she had a lot of thoughts and ups and downs.
Her being filmed? Interesting question. I think Alicia was from the get-go very open to the camera, very open to being filmed. As a documentarian, it's a strange thing when, in the end, you can never know whether the presence of your camera affects someone. But also, in the end, the final product you see is also a dramatized situation already. So it's a bit difficult to answer that question, but
I guess we'd have to ask Alicia.
We'd have to ask Alicia, yeah. But the way that we tried to find this person was that it was an open job ad. And it went through the Estonian National Unemployment Agency, etc. So it wasn't like a casting. It was you're looking for an employee, just they have a very peculiar job. And we had them send in these video greetings that you also saw in the beginning of the film. And when we started watching them to pick the people we would invite for an interview, they were listed alphabetically. And Alicia was, I think, like fourth. And as soon as we saw her, just the way that she interacted with the camera, she was filming herself, but she was very open, very, her ability to reflect herself was beautiful, and she was kind of willing to be vulnerable no matter if someone was looking. And that to me was so captivating that I think that's something very characteristic to her and something that makes her very special as a person and as a character in the film as well.
Yeah, so the job is, I mean, it's kind of independent from the movie, but it's also not. So how did you choose one to go with her? Because I'm assuming you didn't see every single play that she saw as well, right? So how did you choose what you filmed?
I think I had mainly like two, how do you call them? Well, two kind of lines of thought. Mm-hmm. That first I tried to kind of follow as different types of theater as possible. But then a few months in, you already start understanding a bit of Alicia's taste. And you start understanding what might speak to her, in which way. And that's how we started making the choices. And
to get kind of stronger reactions, maybe?
Yeah, to understand what might speak to her and exactly. What's relevant to her, because that's what's relevant to me as a filmmaker. And in the end, like, theater in this film isn't theater on its own. Like, we see theater, or at least the way I tried to do it was that we see theater in a way that it relates to her life. Right. So even the topics that you choose, even the scenes that you choose from a certain play, because when you go and shoot a play, you still shoot like an hour and a half of it. And in the end, you get to pick one 30-second or 1.5 minute segment. So it was always like, what relates to her, what can we use of the theater that drives her story forward.
And what were the things, how did you define what would speak to her or get a reaction? Like, what you would like?
She developed quite a specific taste, actually. She was a lot more drawn to experimental theater than classical theater. That was clear from very early on. She was very excited about plays that interacted with the audience and included the audience. But I think also I always tried to guess thematically. Like, I was reading all of the introductions to all of the plays and kind of planning a few months ahead, and just kind of saying, okay, where could I, through which play could we speak about certain things that are relevant to her?
That's interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting way of filming. Yeah. That's probably pretty unique.
I don't know. I think as whatever documentary you're doing, in the end, like if it's a portrait documentary and this is a portrait, then I think that's the most organic way of approaching it. That you just try to predict life through the eyes of your character in a sense, and that you take them as the alpha and omega of any decision that ends up on the screen.
And I mean, now, like, looking at the film, and we're in the middle of the pandemic and everything's been closed, it feels kind of funny. The timing is very, it's like a celebration of watching things together, and we lost that for a while.
Yeah.
How did you feel about the timing of when it came out?
As a filmmaker, I think for me it's often that once you finish a project, it's done. And this one was finished before the pandemic started, because then new problems and new projects started as well. But as I say, I'm not a big fan of theater. But one thing that I feel I got from this shooting process and from this film myself is that experience of, I think theater in the truest form is such a collective art. You watch it collectively, close to other people, like elbow to elbow with other people, and also like the people on the stage are like, there's so much synergy that has to happen in the very moment for a play to work every night. Like, film is one step away from that, because what's happening on the screen is there forever. You just have the audience reacting to it. But I think in the past 2 years, this is exactly what most of us have been missing, this sense of community or sense of unity, of just breathing together with other strangers and going through something similar that comes to you from the stage or from the screen.
And so it has traveled a little bit, but I'm assuming that you haven't been able to travel with it as much.
Yeah, the film has traveled quite a lot to Iceland, to New Zealand, to Sydney Film Festival, etc. But even to Argentina, and I've been in Estonia. I did have the privilege of going to Love and Anarchy, the Helsinki festival. But
and it seemed like it was very well received in Sydney, and by kind of the English-speaking world, because it was in a Guardian list of best theatre films or something, you know. So I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts about why the English-speaking audiences reacted so strongly.
Honestly, I would even say that I don't think it's specifically English-speaking audience. I think it's cultural and theatre-oriented audiences, because I don't think there's a lot of films that speak about art in such a manner that we don't center around one artist or one creator or one thought of or school of thought on specific culture. I think this experiment in its essence was something quite extraordinary, and that's why it speaks to audiences for whom this topic or this field is important.
Cool. And then I'm wondering about your future work, and if anything that you kind of learned from this project will, well, first of all, tell us about your next work, and then if anything that you experienced while making this film.
Since A Year Full of Drama was my first feature-length film, and I think everything in that process affected how I continue my work, because it's all a learning process. But my next film that just premiered in Nybff documentary festival in the Opus Bonum competition is called Tell Me, and that's spurred from a very different point. The point of the film is that in the first wave of lockdowns, so in March 2020, we started collecting anonymous voicemails from people's home imprisonments. And we did that from 15 countries around the world. So from China to Kosovo to Estonia to France, Germany, England, to Argentina, the States, Canada, etc. At this time when everybody was kind of experiencing this collective trauma, exactly, and people were imprisoned in their homes, and some of them were very happy about it, but some of them were crammed in with violent partners, and some of them hadn't spoken to another adult for 2 weeks. It felt like there are so many emotions that we've never experienced, and maybe very little places to put them. So we opened up these anonymous phone lines and collected just voices, like voice after voice after voice. And that became a poetic documentary called Tell Me.
Okay.
And that's finished now.
Amazing, congratulations, and I look forward to seeing that as well. Thank you for joining us today and giving us a little insight behind your film. I want to remind our audiences all of our lineup is still available until November 14th, so please watch some other films as well, and the Q&As with those directors as well. Thank you, Marta, for being here.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for watching. Good luck.